with our utmost greetings and love for Prophet Muhammad and Ahlul Bayt. So, salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina habibi qulubina Abul Qasim Muhammad wa ala ahli bayt at-tayyibin at-tahirin. If my wonderful brothers and sisters would please join us closer to the front. We don't need all this empty spaces in between. Inshallah, we can make this wonderful lecture more intimate if you would join us closer to the front. Samahat al-Sheikh Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni, Mr. Chairman Hajj Kamal Shrara, Mr. Fuad Birri, fellow board members, Al-Allama, Al-Marja, Ayatollah, Abdul Latif Birri, respected scholars, distinguished dignitaries, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to welcome you all today for the Islamic Institute of Knowledge English program and wish you all a very blessed Ramadan Kareem. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam once said in one of his sermons before the beginning of Shahr Ramadan, he said, Allah's month has arrived upon us with blessings, mercy, and forgiveness. Allah has decreed this month as the best of all months. The days and nights of this month are the best of days and nights, and the hours of this holy month are the best of hours. It is a month in which we all are honored guests of Allah, and with the Almighty's generosity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken every breath we take during this month and turned it into tasbih, or reward. Turned our sleep into worship. Our deeds are accepted and our supplications are answered, inshaAllah. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Our program will begin nightly at 10:30 sharp by reciting the Holy Quran, followed by some announcements if needed. Our guest speaker, Sheikh Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni, will begin at 10:45 for approximately 45 minutes, and then we'll take the last 15 minutes as a question and answer portion from the audience. We will also be giving away 3 iPads during this month to those who pay close attention and are able to answer a designated question related to the lecture. So, for all my young brothers and sisters, and even for the elders as well, it is very important that you show up on time and that you pay attention to the lecture, because those questions will be coming directly out of the lecture. We encourage everyone to participate in our Q&A session. Finally, please be courteous to our speaker and your fellow listeners by keeping this hall as quiet as possible. I will ask all of you to either turn your phones off or switch them to silent mode at this point in time. Our featured speaker, Sheikh Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni, is currently a professor at the University of Detroit Mercy teaching world religions. He holds a PhD in philosophy, a joint PhD in religion and social change concentration. He studied at the ceremonies in Al-Najaf, Iraq, and Qom, Iran. Dr. Kazarouni has given presentations and lectures worldwide. Please help me welcome to the podium Sheikh Dr. Ibrahim Kazarouni with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
لله يا رب العالمين. نحمده ونشكره على ما هدانا ونصلي ونسلم على سيد الأنام خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين.
اللهم صل على محمد.
We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the master of both worlds, the here and the hereafter, in a way that is fitting and proper for his position. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessing of his guidance. We convey our greeting to our holy prophet, who is the seal of prophethood, and his pure progenies and selected disciples. Brothers, sisters, friends, distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To be asked to speak about the month of Ramadan is indeed a privilege. A month so unique in our calendar that, as the brother indicated in his presentation, the khutbah Sha'baniyah clearly defines, and the language distinguishes and reminds everyone as the significance of this month. I'm going to be guest here for 17 nights. This is the first night, and naturally, due to some delay, we may not be able to develop what I intended to speak about during such a short and pressed time in the light of the QA that we have at the end. I intend to cover a number of topics: ethical, moral, spiritual, and if necessary, political, but under the umbrella of the month of Ramadan, as far as it's related to it. I would be grateful if there are issues that brothers and sisters would like to be addressed that I may not have the wisdom to cover so far or included within the list, to indicate it during the question and answer session. And I will gladly include these in my list. There is a verse in the Holy Quran, 183, Surah Al-Baqarah. يا أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O those who have faith, fasting has made an obligation for you in the same manner that it was made an obligation for previous nations, so that you may gain taqwa. I deliberately try to avoid the prevailing interpretation that you may have God-fearing. I don't like that interpretation, so you may have taqwa. The verse itself, 183 Surah Al-Baqarah, classifies 4 major classifications that we must address, so that the relationship between faith on one side, fasting on the other, as well as taqwa, which I would interpret it as becoming God-centric, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes the central issue, the power that dictates and holds everything together. And I am encouraged to have this interpretation by a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, that the ultimate faith is not to be based and centered on fear or reward, but be centered on the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only reality that deserves to be worshipped. So taqwa means God becoming the central issue in our life, nothing to do with fear or expectation of reward. Number one, then, the first category is Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. I intend to be inspired and to be informed in the classification that Quran presents by Quran itself. So if we were to go to the Holy Quran and present the concept of mu'min, let us see what Quran talks about iman, faith, as well as who is faithful. We have a hadith, the verse that the chapter in the Holy Quran, if you intend to follow and spend some time reading about it, Surah Al-Furqan, clearly approaches this concept of iman and mu'min from an Islamic point of view or Quranic point of view. So, and we have in Nahj al-Balagha of Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are a number of sermons, including khutbah of Hamam or Muttaqeen, that clearly defines the true faithful and the true believer. Imam says in that khutbah, when one of his disciples comes to him and he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, explain to me the true faithful from an Islamic point of view, in a manner that I can look, I can see with your description, I can see who the person is. So Imam first tries to push or say, no, go on, have faith and focus on your a'mal and your akhlaq, etc., but he's not satisfied. Comes back and insists. After a preamble at the beginning, فَالْمُتَّقُونَ هُمْ أَهْلُ الْفَضَائِلِ. Muttaqun and the true believers are the wise ones within the community, full of wisdom. مَنْطِقُهُمُ الصَّوَابِ. They only talk what is right. وَمَلْبَسُهُمُ الْاقْتِصَادِ. They economically dress, not extravagant and not in a miserly way. وَمَشْيُهُمُ التَّوَاضُعِ. When they walk with humility. وَغَضُّوا أَبْصَارَهُمْ عَمَّا حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. They control their eyes, their ears, and their tongues. They wouldn't say or hear or see at anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not allowed to be seen, heard, or talked about. This is the beginning of hadith, which I don't intend at the moment to dwell on it, but we have wealth of hadith from Nahj al-Balagha, Sahih al-Sajjadiyya, Quran, and other hadith that clearly defines the first category. Who are the mu'mins? There is a perception when we talk to ourselves, between ourselves, that we consider ourselves to be mu'mins. From an Islamic or from the Quranic point of view, you can divide people according to their faith and action into 4 different groups. There are other classifications, other categories that I don't intend to dwell, based on hatred towards Muslimin and so on, political, so on and so forth. But when it comes to people of faith, 4 different groups. This is one of the fundamental differences that we have between Christianity and Islam. Within Christianity, the belief in Jesus, or the belief in Christ, redemption, and certain concepts, that makes you a true Christian, even if you don't behave as such. Quran, on the other hand, you can see this in the liberation theology within Christianity that they emphasize on action, what they call praxis. Quran says amal and faith, action and faith must go together. Based on amal and faith, you can divide people into 4 different categories. First, those who have faith and they act according to the faith. These are the true believers. Those who have no faith and no action, they consider within the narrative in Quranic and Ahadith as kafir or disbelievers. Those who have faith but they don't act, we pay lip service to our faith. Nothing in our life represents and depicts the faith that we claim to be part of. The dress doesn't reflect it. The talk doesn't show it. The humility is not there. And a number of other concepts. Although we have a number of ahadith from our imams, the infallibles, that say, don't be a faithful that just only talks about faith. Present our idea with your action and your deed, we far from it. So there is a third category that says, yes, I'm faithful, but we don't behave as such. And there are those people that really, they don't have faith, but pretend. These are the munafiqeen that Surah Al-Munafiqeen and other verses in the Holy Quran clearly defines them. The hypocrites within the community. Now, even when we come to the Iman, those who claim to be Mu'min, at least they have faith and they try to act. There are a number of faith that are rejected by Allah. Number one, Iman which is not based on conviction. This is why, from an Islamic point of view, it says when it comes to the principle of faith, usul al-din, taqleed and following somebody else is not enough. What you need to do is you need to endeavor and struggle to find out and be convinced yourself. You can't just say, I follow the faith because my parents told me, or I follow the faith because my teacher said so. I follow the faith because my sister, my eldest sister, or my eldest brother did it. No, that's not enough. Conviction is a matter, an organic condition that comes from the heart. Each and every one of us, we have to spend the time to reach that stage. So, seasonal Iman, the Quran sometimes uses the metaphor of those who are riding on a boat. When they find themselves in difficulty, oh Lord, help. But as soon as the difficulty is over, you get back to the land and stability and so on, you forget about everything. It's called the seasonal Iman. It's rejected. Most of us, if not all of us, we tend to rise or raise our head up towards, focus on this unique reality only when there is nothing else to be dealt with. Which some people refer to it as the spare tire syndrome. Only when we have puncture, we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives. That is not what Quran wants. Faith, the centrality of Allah has to be paramount. The central figure in every second and every moment of our lives, Allah is number one. قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِ وَالنُّسُكِ وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. I breathe for God. I pray for Allah. I live for the sake of the divine. Even my death will be for that sake. This is the taqwa that at the end of the verse refers to. The centrality of Allah in our lives. So those who think that they have this faith seasonal, Quran rejects. Also, there are other people who believe that faith somehow has to conform to the comfort zone that they try to create in their life. Surah Ankabut أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do you think that we have created you and you have gained the faith and you claim to be part of a faith and you are not going to be tested to find out whose faith is real and whose faith is fake? Today I mentioned the story in the previous lecture that I had. Creation of humanity, the story of Genesis, really became the testing ground for the angels. All of them thought that they are praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the existence, the command that said, فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ, a clear instruction to the angels that once I have constructed this clay and blew in it from my own spirit, then you bow. Not all of them did. What happened? The tranquil life shattered to pieces. Iblis and Shaitan stood on one side, the rest of the Malaika stood on the others. So let's not be proud of ourselves. Our faith will be tested in our life repeatedly, again and again. Because ultimately, it's like a sieve. These tests are like sieves that separates what is right and what is wrong. If you are prepared to stand up during the calamity and say, yes, my life is for Allah, that's the strong faith that we need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا. Faith must include action. Prayers, fasting, this is the month of fasting. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ, in the end of Surah Al-Imran, وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. The image of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seen by these faithful everywhere. You don't need to be reminded that Allah is there. You look around, you keep questioning. This is the signs, the ayah. The signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the creation. You see Allah in the midst. If you go back to the 13th and 14th century, people like Aquinas and even Newton and others considered the world to be the open book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You search for God through this universe. You search for the mystery of the divine through this universe. Unfortunately, enlightenment came and world was turned into a materialistic lifestyle and the whole thing changed. One of the characteristics, even if you look at the Quran, one of the characteristics of this Iman is humility. Arrogance and Iman doesn't go together, or they don't go together. Unfortunately, when you go around, you see it's one of the major ethical issues within the community. Morality, and not in its totality, but at least when it comes to humility is absent. We find it difficult to be humble. Iranians find themselves to be superior than the rest. Lebanese consider themselves to be the best thing after the sliced bread. Iraqis consider themselves to be somehow, because of the civilization of early history, they are to be superior. Others are the same thing. Few days ago, even the language that we use clearly defines and depicts how far away from humility we are. Few days ago, I went to Al-Mustafa to get few things. Unfortunately for an African-American brother, police stopped him and he had to pull into the car park to answer a question. Few individuals came out of the shop. The language that they used to refer to this individual which is being questioned by the police made me ashamed. And then we call ourselves faithful. Humility has to be part of it. Luqman tells his son, لا تمشي في الأرض مرحا. Don't walk with arrogance and haughtiness on earth. You haven't reached the height of the mountains. The khutbah of Imam al-Muttaqin says the same thing. Not only economically dress, they have humility when they walk. Takabbur and arrogance is the first person who claimed it was Shaitan in the process of Genesis and the creation of humanity. أنا خير من خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. I am much more superior. This is the first mutakabbir on earth that considered his own unique way of creation to be superior. خلقتني من نار. You created me from fire, and you created this riffraff from clay, rotten clay. And then you ask me to submit and bow to him? That's the takabbur. Inshallah, during tomorrow night and probably next few nights, I will address this particular. One of the critical issues, the most fundamental ethical principle is humility in our lives. That unfortunately, we really need to remind ourselves again and again and again. Another sign, if we look at the Holy Quran, another sign for the true believer is that we constantly remember the hereafter. That this world is a transient world. You are not going to stay here forever. No matter how long you're going to live, how rich you are, how strong you are, what position you have, how comfortable you are, at the end you have to leave everything behind and move. Death becomes the window in which you transfer from one reality into another. Are we prepared for it? Quran says that those who they have iman, رَبَّنَا اصْرِفْ عَنَّا عَذَابَ جَهَنَّمَ إِنَّ عَذَابَهَا كَانَ غِرَامًا. Constantly they remember and ask the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect them from the punishment in the hereafter, because that punishment is intolerable. You cannot tolerate it. You feel the pain where your fingers are burned. What will happen when internal combustion, you burst from within? You hide the sins, you can fool other people by pretenses, but what will happen if your tongue, your skin, and every bit of your existence they become a witness for what you've done during your 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 40 years, 20 years, whatever. To the point that the person says, why? Quran says, look for yourself. This is what you've done. The book is open. Inna basaraka al-yawma. Your eyes, the veils are removed, the reality becomes clear. A believer would constantly think about, a mu'min would constantly think about the hereafter. A believer lives a balanced life, not extravagant, not miserly. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنفَقُوا لَمْ يُسْرِفُوا. Once they spend, they think of a life, they balance, they think that we have a responsibility towards others. مَنْ أَصْبَحَ وَلَمْ يَهْتَمْ بِأُمُورِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَلَيْسَ بِمُسْلِمٍ. There is a social responsibility between individual, ummah, and community. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salamu alayhi sends a letter and dismisses his representative or wali in Basra. Why? not because he committed the cardinal sin, because on the month of Ramadan he went to a rich man's house and filled his stomach with food. Imam says, how can you, as my representative, go and eat until you are full, while in your neighborhood there are those who do not remember the last full stomach in their life? This is the dynamic society in which everyone, al-mu'minu akhul mu'min, there is a bond, a chemistry between them. If the only thing that matters to us are ourselves and our ego, to the rest of the world doesn't matter, we can't claim to be faithful and mu'min. Not only extravagant lifestyle, we can't go to the extreme on the other side, because as I have explained in my previous presentations here, humanity or human being, an insan, is made out of two characters, two components, material and spiritual. Any attempt to come up with a prescription that would destroy one at the expense of the other is not going to be accepted. So here, not only spending too much time trying to focus on the material lifestyle is rejected, going to the extreme and spending everything you have for the sake of Allah is not going to be accepted either. اعمل لدنياك كأنك تعيش أبدا واعمل لآخرتك كأنك تموت غدا. Create the balance. Live for the sake of your life as if this material life. Islam doesn't want poor, needy, destitutes that rely on others. No. Islam wants hard-working individuals that struggle and they make it, but at the same time they would not forget the hereafter and they spend their dues for the sake of the community and the weak and the needy within the community. The month of Ramadan is a depiction of this reality, where hunger and thirst, part of the sociological reason for it is to understand what your neighbor, the poor neighbor, is going through day in, day out. And Allah has given you all this wealth, part of it has to be spent for the needy within the community. There is a story that they came to the Holy Prophet and they said, one of your disciples is dead. So he goes to the house and finds the family in a very bad shape, in poverty. Said, what happened? He was a wealthy individual. They told him that yes, he spent all his money for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Wallah, if I knew that he had done this, I would not have allowed him to be buried within the Muslim burial site. Because this is irrational. A mu'min has to use his intellect. Aql, human intellect, is part. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us two sources of guidance. One from within, one from without. Within is human intellect. And they have to work together with the guidance of the inspiration and to be informed by revelation that comes under the guidance of the prophets. So they have to work together. You can't separate these two from each other. Allah doesn't want you to spend all your wealth that you have worked hard for it, for the sake of akhirah, living your community and your family in abject poverty. But at the same time, doesn't want you to forget about them either. وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَدْعُونَ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ. Another character of a mu'min, Allah becomes the central issue. Other small gods that shackle one's life and controls it. Quran says, وَإِلَهُهُمْ هَوَاهُمْ. Sometimes your ego becomes your God with a small g. That controls your lifestyle. Everything in life is for the sake of satisfying that ego. Whether that ego is wealth, position, power, knowledge, whatever it is. Allah, the centrality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes a critical issue for the believer. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahy 'anil munkar, another critical issue for the believer. This amr bil-ma'ruf, that because of al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min, each believer is a true mirror for the fellow believer. And if we see shortcomings there are hadith and stories from early history of Islam during the life of the Holy Prophet and even our Imams, where the believers would go around and ask their fellow believers, please guide me. If you see a shortcomings, remind me. How many of us are prepared to tolerate criticism when somebody comes to you and says, look, what you said last night was inaccurate? Immediately, we react. Al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahy 'anil munkar. But we have to understand how to do it. There is a hadith that not only defines it in the religious concept, the political implication of this not doing it is critical and reminds the community. أَمْرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهُوا عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ أو لسلط الله عليكم شراركم فيدعو خياركم فلا يستجاب. Encourage people to do good. Discourage them from doing evil. Why? Otherwise, if you don't do this and you allow the fabric, the balance of the social structure and the societal hierarchy to break down, the worst will come to power and the best will simply play all. There is no answer. Because you created, by allowing falsehood to dictate, you created the right environment for falsehood to fester. And this is one of our responsibilities. To allow at least 15 minutes for question and answer or so, and this is the first night, I really would like brothers and sisters here to participate in the QA, because the information that I take and the type of questions that I hear and I address might become the source or the theme for future lectures, inshallah, or presentations. So I hope you would not hold back, and if you have a specific question that you need to be addressed, please do so. Let me end with a prayer. Oh Allah, forgive our sins and shortcomings. Guide us during this blessed month to the right path if we are not on it. And give us the privilege of staying on it if we are. Hasten the return of our hidden Imam, Anjalallah Ta'ala Farajah. Keep us united and strong. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sallallahu alaihi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Dr. Kazarouni, thank you very much. Did you prepare a question for us tonight?
Rather, to break the ice with the brothers and sisters, let's see if...
We have one question that we have to ask for the iPad winner. So if you can give me one question from the lecture that you just gave, I would be really happy.
For tonight?
From tonight's lecture.
How do you define the moment?
How do you define the moment? Is this the answer from the...
Between all these, what I said, the answer is clear.
From
yes.
The lecture that you gave. What is the definition of a moment from the lecture that Dr. Kazarouni gave us? Okay. We're going to pass the papers and the pens, right? And please write it down with your name and phone number, and we will collect it every Friday or Saturday night, I think. Saturday is a better time. Every Saturday night we will do a draw, and we will give one iPad to the winner. And
And there will be 2 other certificates for maybe Dairy Queen or whatever. I'm not sure what they have yet. We'll announce it, inshallah, in the next couple of nights. But we'll have 3 winners every week, inshallah. So what is the definition of a believer based on a lecture that Dr. Kazarouni just gave us? Keep that in mind, and we're going to take your questions so that the doctor may answer for you. Anyone has any questions, please? There you go.
Afwan, Doctor. Did you ever hear about the story about Jabir Ansari telling Amir al-Mu'mineen about his dream? Do you know which one? About when the rich become richer, that's when the Imam will come. Did you ever hear that story?
Well, there are a number of stories, brother, about the return of the Imam.
No, I know, but one about where when one of the signs is when the rich becomes richer and the poor become poorer.
Yeah, the breakdown of fabric of society. I mean, that the rich become richer and the poor become poorer is only an indication that the social fabric is broken down. I'm not quite clear whether this is a question or a statement.
Can we consider that with the Democrat and the Republican? Because basically with the Republican, it's a flat tax.
Well, the economic system here is the capitalist economic system is, we need to discuss it to understand how it functions, and then we see how it relates to the have and the have-nots within the society.
So you're saying that there's a hadith that says that when the poor gets poorer, and when the rich gets richer, what's going to happen? What will happen? The Imam al-Asr will come back. So it's one of the signs, but you're referring to the Republicans and the Democrats as a richer and the poor. I don't think there's any relation.
Well, I mean, from an Islamic point of view, certainly we have a number of hadith. Muli al-ard zulman wa ju'.
Right.
When the earth is filled.
But he's tying this with the political system that we're living in right now.
We have really to separate the two together.
Yes,
separate them.
You can't tie them together.
Certainly, some of the hadith clearly indicates the breakdown of the society, which the rich become richer and the poor become poorer. It becomes part of this. With regard to the political or the parties and how much influence they have on the capitalist system in this country, this is what I teach as political economy, the word political economy. That's something separate.
Thank you. Any questions? Any other questions? Anyone else?
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so when you break your fast for an intentional reason, for example, like you were working too hard and you had to break it, when you make up your day and pay kafara, does that mean Allah forgave you for your sin, or is it still going to be held against you on the day of judgment?
See, breaking of the fast deliberately, when there are no reasons for it, have been clearly stated in the Holy Quran and in the books of your mujtahid's opinion as to the consequences that they have. But if for an emergency reason one has to break it, one loses consciousness, or in somebody who suffers from diabetes suddenly goes into some kind of a spasm and so on, that they have these exceptional circumstances, they have to take, repeat or fast the day that, or the days that they have not fasted between one Ramadan and the Ramadan after. And they may have kafara as well, depending on the circumstances.
But does Allah forgive the one that breaks their fast on purpose?
On purpose, no. I mean, forgiveness is in the hands of Allah.
How does he attain forgiveness?
Yeah, there are punishment, but tawbah in general, when somebody decides to ask Allah for forgiveness of the old sin, and they commit that they are not going to repeat this again. Inshallah.
There is a penalty for breaking on purpose.
Yes.
And the penalty
Is 60 days for each day that they break,
60 days
and
of
at least
fasting.
31 days consecutively.
Right.
So you need to go to Risala Amaliyah of the views of your Muslim. to see.
Or the other alternative,
If they can't fast, then it becomes
have to
kafara.
pay
Yes,
the
pay
kafara.
dues for.
and if you pay the kafara and then you make up your fast, you should be fine. Allah does forgive, inshallah. God will forgive. More questions, please, on your fast, if you want, on your Ramadan experiences.
Sisters, you seem to be timid.
Praying prayer Allah while you're fasting, would that break your fast or no?
What is it?
If you forgot to pray?
If you forget to pray while you're fasting, does that break your fast?
No, it's not. It's totally independent things. You will be punished for not praying if you do it deliberately. But the fast is, as long as you don't commit anything that negates your fast, simply not offering prayer is not part of what breaks the fast. They are totally independent.
Not if you miss the subah. If you wake up for the subah, you miss it. If you wake up for the subah and just go back to sleep, that's when you break the fast.
If you wake up in the morning and then you go back to sleep and you don't pray, no, it does not
No,
break
that's
your fast.
not. That what you are referring to refers to something else. It's for those who have janaba the night before, and if they don't do ghusl and they go to sleep deliberately, they wake up. I think these questions of what we call jurisprudential issues, it's better to look at the book of your marja for further explanation.
There are common answers to a lot of these questions.
Yes.
And it's good if you can answer them, we will answer them. Otherwise, you can always refer back to your marja's information.
Assalamu alaikum. Is there an exact chapter or verse in the Quran that refers to Imam Mahdi's return?
A specific name that says Imam Mahdi will return under this condition or that condition, no. But there are a number of verses in the Holy Quran that from Ahlul Bayt, they have been interpreted as a reference to Imam and the establishment of justice that will happen under his guidance. The best book that you can read is, I believe, Bahar al-Anwar, volume number 13, I believe, which has been translated into a number of languages that talks about the signs, the verses, hadith that we have. Sheikh Ali Qurani, the scholar from Lebanon, has a number of books in Arabic. I believe they have been translated into English as well, that specifically focuses on the return of the Imam and the sources from Quran and Hadith that indicates, as well as the signs. I mean, our brother said one of the, when society becomes dysfunctional, is this a sign of the return? He lists a number of signs and said which ones have been satisfied, which ones have not been satisfied. Go to alislam.org and type in Qurani or the 12th Imam, the return of the Imam, and you see a number of articles referring to this.
Dr. Bahar al-Anwar, how many?
Bahar al-Anwar, I believe, is
How many volumes is that?
I think because they have been reviewed and edited, at the moment, in the Arabic verses, I stand to be correct, close to 60 volumes. But this is number 13, which is specifically about the return of the 12th Imam. Ahadith that are related to it and the verses in the Holy Quran with the commentaries on them.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody that the papers, the clips have been passed to everyone, I think, right? Please write the answer on those papers with your name and number. Only one per family, please. Thank you. I haven't heard from the ladies' side. They're perfect.
I have a comment.
You have a comment? Yeah.
This is actually for the young men, young boys, young girls. Tell them why they should take their time when they pray, take their time. Pray on time. Not mommy reminds them all the time, go pray.
Putting them on the spot.
Well, a light-hearted story, I think, would explain this and puts the responsibility on the shoulder of the parents as well. I was invited many years ago by Office of Ayatollah Sistani to go to Canada as his representative in Montreal. And during the month of Ramadan, I was asked to go to Ottawa. I went, one Iraqi brother came to me and he said, Imam, I have a problem with my son. I said, well, what is the problem? He said, up to last night, I used to think that my son does his early morning prayer on time, he does his adhan, iqamah, recitation, everything perfectly. Until last night. So I said, what happened last night? He said, well, in the middle of the Bismillah al-Hamd, suddenly everything stopped. So I opened the door, my son was asleep. There was a tape recorder next to his bed. This crafty old devil had recorded from adhan, iqamah, salat, ta'qibat, all on the tape. And as soon as Dad would call him, Mahmoud, get up for prayer. Yes, Dad. He would wake up, wait for a few seconds. His dad is doing his wudu and going to do his salat. He would press the play and go to sleep. In the middle of the prayer, he was unlucky that night that the tape recorder ran out of battery. So his dad is listening to him while he's doing his adhan, and suddenly everything drops dead. So he walks in and finds out. I think rather than putting our children on the spot, we really need to work with them. It's not a matter of just telling them. It's a long process that starts from early on, that you ask the children to stand up with you, to imitate you, to be aware of. And if you, I mean you including me, if parents really do the prayers right at the beginning of the time, we are the role model for them, they begin to imitate. So we need to discuss these, inshallah, as part of the topics that I will address during the nights.
Thank you. Any more questions from the ladies tonight? Do you have a follow-up? Do you have a follow-up? No?
Today, I wasn't talking about my son. That was in general.
General, this is a general, yes.
He does pray and I do lead. But I tell him, put them and you should
فَذَكِّرْ, the verse in the Holy Quran, sister says, فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. We as believers, really to be reminded, we need to be reminded all the time. SubhanAllah, shaitan works in a mysterious way. That we have to be reminded constantly. So it's not specific towards you personally or me personally. It's the general community that needs to address these critical issues.
No? Sure.
You can email those of you who are bashful and they don't want to ask a question in front of everybody else, but you have a number of questions that you need to be addressed, or you can email it.
Or you can write it on a piece of paper and hand it to me.
Yeah, and
I'll read the question for you.
A question maybe irrelevant to the subjects you were talking about, but I'm just always bothering me this question. We all know there was 124,000 prophet and messages were revealed all through the time. But my question is, why we don't have nobody at this time, after 1,400 years of absence of the prophet, that we have some, especially in this kind of a situation we're living in the earth, as we know, as all problems and nothing but problems. So I always wondering why there's nothing revealed during this last 1,400 years.
well, there is a short answer, a quick answer for this, and a long one. A quick answer is that the role and the responsibility that most prophets, apart from Ulul Azm, these are the ones that had a clearly defined book and a way, the minor prophet that came, that supported and expanded on it, that responsibility was supposed to be taken up by the scholars. So there is a clear central issue, and then the scholars will take the responsibility to answer the question as time went on. That's the basic, but inshallah, if there is time, I will focus on addressing that particular issue.
Inshallah. No more questions, right?
Inshallah.
Okay, I just want to say something about the prayer calendar that we did this month, for the month of Ramadan. There's a lot of questions that came my way, and to the Samahat al-Sheikh, and to the Majma', asking us why the imsak time, imsak is when you stop eating actually, why the imsak time is at 4:25 for the Majma' calendar when it's at 3:40, 3:50, 4, 4:10, 4:25, 4:15 I think. I've seen like 5 or 6 different ones out there, and each one is different. And I'm not even sure if they even know what they're doing. This is the reality of it. I've been doing this calendar for the last 25 years. We are never certain when dawn or the twilight actually breaks. The Quran, the Holy Quran says something about, and eat and drink until until you have noticed or you have witnessed the white line from the black line of the night. That's the break of dawn, okay? So you are supposed to eat and drink. He didn't say fast. He said eat and drink until that time. Okay, so he's giving you all the time to eat and drink. As long as you're not certain when dawn started, you can continue to eat until you go out and you witness the dawn by your own eyes. Okay? So what we did is we followed a regular method that's been used overseas, and in the winter time we use it here, is within that last hour and a half before the sun rises is when the dawn actually starts to be noticed. So we set it at within an hour and a half. So the imsak time is 1.5 hours before sunrise, and then we give you another 10-15 minutes to prepare for your prayers. That's why you will see the difference. Now, there is a challenge in there to anyone that may believe that this is the wrong way to do it. Is to go out there at 4:30. Our calendar says 4:25, right? Go out there at 4:30 in the morning and see if you can see the light on the east side. If you can see the break of light from the east side, that's when the dawn starts, okay? I guarantee you, you won't see it, even at 4:30. So we still have some precaution in there, all right? In case someone is asking about this, I just wanted to clarify. Someone wanted to ask?
There's a quick question about what you just said about the break of dawn.
All right, you know how we live here in the city and there's a lot of houses and a lot of buildings covering the horizon. So, I mean, how do we, like, even if we're looking out in the sky and we see a lot of houses covering the break of dawn, it takes a little bit of time for the light to really get, you get what I'm saying?
Right, I know what you're saying. What you need to do is actually get out of the city where there's a lot of light, unnatural light, okay? Go away from the city where maybe close to a farm, a flat land. This way maybe it's better for you to notice it. And make sure it's not cloudy, okay? Or hazy, or whatever the atmosphere is. But trust me, try it for yourself and see exactly. If you determine when the dawn breaks, you have to follow this on a regular basis. That this is dawn time. Any other comments, questions?
It's very confusing, brother, but that's because nobody goes out and check the light. But the Adhan, the site said the Adhan is 4 o'clock, 4:01.
I know. If you, which app you have?
That's a break time and by the second.
What's the name of it?
Break time and 4.
Okay. If you look at any prayer app, they have at least 5 or 6 methods in each app to determine the Fajr time. Each one is different than the other.
Like 1 minute or 2 minutes different.
No, there are ones that are like 20, 25, or even 40 minutes. I've seen it. There are some that say 3:40, 45, and they stretch all the way down to like 4:15, 4:20. It depends on which method you follow. Each one is different. If you go like I checked the Lebanon prayer times for today, and the prayer, the morning prayer is at 3:59, and the sunrise as an hour and 29 minutes after that. It's more consistent when you are within the last hour and a half before the sun rises. It's important to realize that when you say the break of dawn, when you talk about dawn or the twilight, you're talking actually about the sun rising. Okay, when you have IMSAC papers out there that say that you have to do IMSAC at 3:40, remember, you do IMSAC actually at Fajr. Okay? So if you do it at 3:40 and the sun rises at 5:55, that's 2 hours and 45 minutes. There's no way on earth that the sun will come out 3 hours after the break of dawn. There's no way. It's got to be at least an hour, hour and 15 minutes maximum. Okay? So that's how you know if there's a problem. If the time is between 2 and 3 hours, that's where the problem is. It should not be 2 to 3 hours. It should be 1 to 1.5, maximum maybe 140, 145 minutes. Okay? That's a rule of thumb. You can try your apps. You can switch your Fajr settings to different, like there's Al-Qura, there's one from Qom, there's one from Pakistan. There are different ones. If you try each one of them, it will give you a different time for dawn. Okay? With this, we conclude. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow. We're going to move the lecture to the upper hall. I'm going to put the chairs up there. So, for a crowd like ours, it's a lot better to be close to each other. Yes, and please, before you leave, let's collect can you pass them? Yeah, please. Can you help with this? Thank you. Where's the sheikh? Hold on. What is the answer for that question? They can't change the answer. Want to stick around for the answer? You can tell us what the answer. This is the question.
Yeah. Can I leave anonymous?
Yeah.